Welcome to the Art Lady channel. Today we're going to be painting this or creating this painting of the view from inside a coral reef. And so it's either a person is inside the coral reef, you know, a scuba diver, and looking out into the open ocean, or it could be a little fish that's inside a cave in the ocean looking out, just waiting for these predators to leave. So it's kind of a fun and interesting composition. Very simple to do. This is an example from a grade 5 that did this painting. Of course, they have the sharks in here and some bright, beautiful coral. This is another 5th grade example. I love this. It's gorgeous, gorgeous colors here. And this was actually fluorescent paint that we used and some beautiful sponging techniques I'm going to show you. But this is lovely. And they even stuck in a little anchor with some chain. And this was from my 3rd grade students here. And they put some, you know, of course, the anchor coming down. So this could possibly be the scuba divers trapped inside. And here's another 3rd grade example here. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how simple this is to do. And it's actually quite fun. Here's another example here with some other fun animals in it as well. And here is another background that I did of the cave. And I added some black in here, and I'll show you how to do these black pieces of soft coral here. But the first thing I have the students do is to take their large square, of course, after they have their names on everything, and we use some tempera paint that's been watered down a little bit. You can use acrylic paint or even acrylic house paint that's been watered down, and I have them basically just cover the entire square real quick and fast using long horizontal strokes. And if they want to start at the top and work their way down, they can. They can use different colors if they want. They can use, and I have some lighter values here. And I'm just going back and forth. They can mix on top, like I'm going back. This is kind of like the ombre, going from dark to light or light to dark. But it's a gradation of color. If you want to do that, you can. Or you can just do it very painterly, like, let me show you over here on this example. This is very painterly with lots of strokes showing. If you layer these colors, say if you put one color down first, and you do it real fast, real thin, and you don't want to leave any puddles. And I'm just going to cover it quickly. You notice I'm going right past this square that we have on our paper. You can even add another value on top. Now what's happening is my first value is absorbing into the paper. My second value on top, and you can do another value on top of everything or just partial. I'll show you what happens if you want to use scrapers. And you can make your own scrapers or you can use some man-made scrapers. And what I do with the scrapers, these are man-made. I mean, these are actually commercial bought scrapers. And what happens is I'm going to be scraping over the surface, leaving a little bit of texture behind. So this is one way of finishing it. I could leave my paper like this, or taking the scraper, just go right over it. This just gives another kind of a layer of texture to the painting. Just something else fun to add. So I can lay this down. And then what I do is I have the kids go back now and sponge over this. And we're using different kinds of sponges. And what I do is I spread the paint very thin in the trays. We dip in and we're going to sponge on the edge a little bit here. This will show a little bit of coral peeking through, just dabbing, dabbing. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sponge around my cave. And when I sponge the cave, I'm using just a kind of a kitchen sponge here, and I've rounded the corners, and I've kind of cut so that it's not perfectly straight here. And we dip into a styrofoam tray that has a little bit of paint. It's like dab, pressing, lightly press, and you can kind of hear it tacky. And I'm just using tempera paint, and I go to my edges, and I want to round my edges. So I'm just rounding all the edges first. And this is to create that cave. So go to the edges, round your edges, and then very shallow, not very deep here. I just want it to be just a few fingers wide from the edge of my paint. I just want to do a little bit of edge of the cave here. And of course you can see some of the color come through. And then down here, and this you want to be rounded, so it looks like you're peeking out a hole. And I'm going to press lightly, and kind of keep my edges kind of smooth here to give the illusion that it's a rounded hole. You don't want to come too far into the page. You want to leave most of this area open for your fish and your designs and all the fun things you want to put in. So now I'm rounding, and when you have a nice rounded hole, a round or oval hole that you like, go ahead and stop with the black. And then what I have the kids do is, if you want to take some pieces of cardboard cut, and I have them use the fresh end. This end has already been used with kids here, so I'm using the straight end that nobody's used. And I pour a little bit of paint on a styrofoam tray, and you can dip into this paint, and I kind of dab on the edge here in the tray so it's not so wet. And I'm going to be forming some corals with this, and I'm just going to press and print, and then I'm going to connect it together like this, and I'm going to come up and do some coral. You want to make sure when you make your coral it's all growing up, so the lines are going up, and kind of a Y shape or a V shape. See how this is forming the letter Y or a V? And I'm just pressing my coral in, and it makes really pretty bony type coral. And it looks a lot like the soft corals or the sponges that grow that live in the ocean. I'll show you some of the real ones right here. We're getting this kind of branching system. This is a sponge here that I found after a storm that washed up to shore, and here's some coral that I found after a storm, and this was about 30 years ago. I found these coral, and it was just, they were dead already on the beach, washed up, but you see how it makes this branching system? Now you can of course design this any way you want to. You can even put some smaller corals in here, some branches in here, but you're starting to get some layers in your painting and depth. So we have the foreground, and this is kind of forming the middle ground here, and this is kind of the middle ground, and then way, way, way in the background we're going to be painting our sharks on. And what I give the kids is I give them just a silhouette sheet that I got off the internet. This is like clip art that I printed off the internet, and this just gives them some nice silhouettes to paint by. Actually, it was upside down. There you go. And so we go ahead then with some black paint, and you can use tempera paint or watered down, thinned up acrylic. I just like to use tempera with my kids. We go ahead and we freehand paint in the sharks. And the way I do sharks with the kids is I have them start off with a very small, thin, I'm going to turn my paper here, line. And then we form the cigar shape to the line. So I'm going to come up thicker in the middle and thin, leaving this a point. So it looks almost like a very narrow skinny leaf or a very narrow skinny cigar with a point. And then I take my brush, and this is a number 2. This is one of my favorite round brushes here. It's a Princeton number 2. And if you use the point, this will give a beautiful shark head. Right here, a nice skinny point. And then underneath that point, and it's not at the end here, you're going to skip down, press the brush again, and that's the opening of the shark mouth. Right here. Oops. Now I'm going to use the tip of my brush, and then I'm going to work on the tail. So the mouth is shorter, it comes out shorter. It doesn't, the mouth doesn't start up in here. And then of course my tail flares out, and then the smaller one and then connect, and then print back, curve, and then you can do some smaller fins here and some at the bottom like that. So you start off with that cigar, and then you can, you know, adapt it to the different kinds, but that's basically the standard basic shaped shark there. If you're going to do your hammerhead, of course your head is going to be different, but these help the kids get the correct silhouettes of the sharks, and I like them in groupings of 3. It just makes it more interesting. Or if you want to do one with some other kinds of sea life, that's fine as well. But this is basically how you do this simple printed cave in the coral reef.